page 5 of The Guardian, calls for compulsory MP training to tackle the sexist culture. I mean, is that really necessary?
Yes.
Yes. It's obviously, yeah.
But yeah, after weeks of these sort of sleaze and scandal allegations and information from Westminster, this is a call for compulsory training, which I totally agree with you, Isabel, is absolutely bleak that is necessary, but necessary it clearly is. There's a variety of calls being put forward to try to tackle what is clearly a extremely problematic culture within Westminster, not just for MPs, but for the multitude of staff for whom that is their 9-to-5 workplace and for whom it's clearly a place that does not feel safe and feels incredibly disrespectful. I think implementing things like staff training, changing the employment contracts so that your employer is not just the MP that you work for, all feels, I think, necessary and useful. But I think we can't shy away from the fact that under Boris Johnson, we have a leader who demonstrates total contempt for basic ethical standards and a culture of impunity has been propagated within Westminster. If you have a Prime Minister who repeatedly defends his own ministers against claims of bullying, against claims of inappropriate lobbying, then that feeds this culture where people feel invincible.
Yes. Well, Boris Johnson was really robust in his critique of the people who were claiming that Angela Rayner was trying to distract him with some sort of basic instinct stunt. He spoke out about that. There has, for the last 3 years, been this new system whereby people can lodge complaints in a kind of attempt to clean up Westminster. Yeah. It's being used. You could argue that we're seeing an increase in these sorts of stories, but that could just be that it's being reported and handled better now.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that. We have to hope that what we're seeing here is more women within the House of Commons, be those MPs or staffers, feeling confident in coming forward. And I think the changes that were implemented after the last scandal, after the Westminster scandal, have clearly helped. Yeah. I do think we could see calls for more investigators. Too many people report that they don't bother bringing forward complaints because it takes too long. Yeah. It's quite a demeaning process. We see echoes of what we see in the justice system more generally. So, yes, I think there are practical steps which can be taken. And I was pleased to see Boris Johnson come out so robustly against that ludicrous Angela Rayner story. But I still think there is this culture of impunity operating within Westminster.
And I think, Amy, I think where it backs up what you say there is you just have to look at other workplaces. If you work in a school or a bank or indeed here, I mean, would you be aware of sexual pesting stories in here? Answer no.
In my career, I've definitely experienced it within the industry.
No, but that's not what I asked you. And there are certain working environments we say, no, it doesn't seem to exist.
No, it gets dealt with.
And one of the reasons I think it doesn't exist is that broadcast in general probably have more female employees than male.
Yeah, potentially. But just going back to Westminster and this culture of impunity, I mean, Neil Parish has resigned. He said he got caught and he has resigned. Well, so it's not as if he's going off scot-free.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Isabel, because it's fine as the story that Amy's picked out in The Guardian calls for compulsory MP training. But really, hang on. It doesn't matter what training you bring in, you cannot legislate for the fact that somebody thought it was acceptable to watch pornography in the House of Commons chamber. And if you have to train human beings to understand that that's not right, that's all a bit, woeful. And I think you've seen it recently with bullying judgments against the former Speaker, John Bercow. I think Parliament is cleaning up its act. And I'll tell you the biggest thing you could do in Westminster to clean this all up is cut down on the drinking culture. We've talked about it on this channel.
Kwasi Kwarteng came out and said at the weekend, come on, that's a bit, a bit po-faced to make sure that everyone has to be dry. I mean, there's plenty of people who can work long hours.
Yes,
there's plenty of people who can drink responsibly.
I'm telling you, Kevin, the television industry, if you go back to the 1980s, every TV company, BBC and ITV, had a bar, right? Yeah. And if they didn't have a bar, they had a bar right outside the front door. And drink was part of the culture. Yeah. Now, I can sit and recount. I'm OK with that. I'm a non-drinker, but I was OK with how people relaxed. I also watched people drunk. And I knew their habits, drunk in the newsroom, while people like me were expected to pull up the slack and work while the rest of them were sleeping it off.
Correct.
Whatever. So it was there. They took it out of television. You won't even be aware of it.
No.
So you
but
joined
my response to that
my
is...
point is, you take it out, you get rid of the problem.
No, I think you're just treating everybody like children. I mean, if people can't drink responsibly, take them out of the situation. Come on, are we really saying we have to have a dry parliament?
No, but not dry, but the booze...
Well, why shouldn't you have a dry parliament?
Well, you have lots of functions. Perhaps people come in to get awards or whatever. They go and go...
You set up a function for that. I don't really understand...
if you're saying there's no drinks allowed anywhere in Parliament...
No, you're not. You're saying that if a function comes in, you set up for the function. That is a wholly different thing, or you go outside to drink. But I think it's rather weird in today's society that you have a workplace that has got 4, 5, 6 bars.
But it's not a normal workplace. It's not a 9-to-5 office. It's somewhere where people are voting up until late in the night.
Until they start feeling your bum.
That makes it worse.
Yeah, so that's basically what they're doing.
It's so unhealthy to have so much cheap alcohol available to people under pressure. And a minister came out and said it the other day in response. And I know, as Amy just said, Neil Parish wasn't drunk when he did what he did. But the fact is, we're talking about how to make Parliament better. There's too much cheap booze, too easily available, and it serves none of us.
OK, if we can't act responsibly, and we'll be puritanical about it all. Anyway, we'll agree to disagree. Well, I just don't understand why we have to treat everyone... Because one person or however many people behave like children, we all have to...
Name me another business.
Plenty of places have bars. People have sleep pods at work now. People have...
And they have bars at work.
Foosball. Yeah, bars. Foosballs. Foosball tables.
Working spaces.
Our old business, Sky News, had a bar up in the loft.
I don't disagree that it's something we could clamp down on. I do think it's an overly narrow view of the problem, because so many of these incidents take place during the working day when, I mean, I'm hoping against hope the staff are not drunk at that point and the MPs are not drunk at that point. I do think that the culture of drinking in Westminster is likely problematic. I don't think that's the entire story, though, and I think much more needs to be done to root out this sense of power that MPs appear to have, and this sense that they are untouchable, and that is fed through the way they're dealt with.
I think that most MPs go into it with the right intentions. It's in many ways...
I do agree most do. I agree most do, but I think there is, unfortunately, a culture within which this sort of behaviour is allowed to carry on, whether it's bullying, sexual harassment, whatever.
They're like news presenters. They get a bad rap sometime, and it's not fair.
It's not fair. I tell you this, though. They're away from home, practically all of them. They work long hours. I'm not against MPs, and I do think they should be paid more, and I think they should be respected more. And I think they'd make a stupid mistake of making too many of the high-powered ones available to minor people like myself to interview them. It should be the days of old where you restricted who got to interview who. The Prime Minister's available to too many people on too many shows, and it doesn't score well. But they live away from home, they do long unsociable hours, temptation is there.
Right, so if people can't be trusted to work away from home, in this day and age, if these MPs have to behave inappropriately, then make them stay at home and zoom in if that's the world we live in. I just don't understand why we have to accommodate come down to the lowest bar. I just don't get it.
But it's not about that. It's about not facilitating or increasing the likelihood. You don't... And I know it's different. They are passing laws, right? One of the most important things you can do in society. I know it's different. We don't have bars in hospitals. Now, I know that, but it's serious jobs. Why is there booze around? Paid for, subsidised by the state.
And you can have a glass of wine or whatever it is with your lunch. There's nobody saying you shouldn't do that. There are plenty of restaurants and whatever. But within reason, it's not a pub. It's not a pub, and it should be a debating chamber first and not a pub. But there we go. That's it. But
Let us know your
you actually haven't visited. You haven't.
I haven't been inside for all my opinions, but
when you see inside and you see somebody's walking behind us, you sashay up the corridor.
I've been into the Lords. I've not been into the Commons, believe it or not.
Breathing all round you. Yeah. Maybe you'll speak differently.
Maybe.
Anyway. Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.